Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sarah and I make videos about the ADHD experience. So if you resonate with any of the things that I talk about in my videos, whether or not you have ADHD, this content is for you. Before I get into what today's video is about, I want to just quickly make a note that I have started to take the audio component of my videos and make them into podcast content. What am I trying to say? I've made podcasts out of the audios from my video. This is so hard. So currently those are available on, as far as I know, the Apple Podcast platform and the Spotify platform. And I will do my best to link it down below too. I'm still figuring out how this whole podcast routine works, but I should be able to link it just fine, and you can find it on those two platforms. The podcast is called Walk Me Home, just like the YouTube channel. So go and check that out if you prefer an audio format. I know sometimes I like to listen to a podcast depending on what I'm doing rather than watching a video. So just so that the content is available in more formats, that is now a thing I'm doing. Also, really quickly, I have created a playlist of all of my ADHD videos, and I will link that down below. In fact, I've linked it in all of my ADHD videos so far, so that link can be found down below in the description, and feel free to just binge that if you find yourself having a day where you just need a lot of support. So today, as you can tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about the concept of people with ADHD being sort of like a jack of all trades. And I'm going to talk about why I think that that happens, how we might find ourselves in that situation. And then I'm going to talk about the benefits, the good things, the upside of being a jack of all trades. So first, I wanted to pursue a better understanding of the term jack of all trades because I had seen on a meme or something that the way that we use that phrase now is actually taken out of context from the original intended use. And because, it's hard to believe anything on the internet, I just went in search of some clarification for that. So I actually found an article by Forbes, which I will link down below, that kind of described the evolution of that phrase from its original context, which according to the article, the phrase was used to describe William Shakespeare. Today, I think that the term jack of all trades is used in sort of like a degrading way, like a way to minimize somebody's credibility, minimize somebody's experience, and kind of downplay maybe the value that someone might bring to a job, to a relationship, to any kind of a group setting. But I think it's important to understand where that phrase came from and the original intent for it. So I will read here. The original quote was in the Forbes article, and what it says is, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one," which I really like because it highlights the idea that there is something very valuable about having a wide range of experiences or interests and not necessarily specializing. So this is something that I talk about in terms of being a generalist or a specialist. There's a lot of overlap between that concept and the concept of jack of all trades, but oftentimes you can think of a person who's a jack of all trades as being more of a generalist. And I used to think that that was like something that was bad about me, that I am a jack of all trades or a generalist, as I kind of looked around my life and saw a lot of specialists, a lot of people who either knew what they wanted to be when they grew up or knew what career field they wanted to go in and have stayed in that field and have a very deep knowledge and expertise and experience on something, whereas I don't have as deep of knowledge as they might have, but I have a very wide knowledge that a lot of those people in my life don't necessarily have. So I do think that there isn't one that's better than another, but I think that oftentimes the world can kind of make us feel like it's better to be a specialist than a generalist, and it's better to be a person who knows what you like and what you're good at and have that be one thing rather than have that be a lot of different things. And a lot of times I think that the reason that is seen in a negative way is that being specialized often, if you know how to market that as a trait, it can often look really good on resumes, it can look really good in your career, whereas it's a totally different skill to market yourself as a generalist or as a jack of all trades. And I think that sometimes it's easy to see yourself as like less than, having less experience, having less value to bring to the table. And I just don't think that's the case. So, as I always say, nothing that I talk about is meant to be generally applied to everyone who has ADHD. Some of it even overlaps into the experience of people who don't have ADHD or people who have other things going on. And I definitely don't speak for any one group, population, or experience. So keep that in mind just generally, but it applies to everything that I talk about here, especially. So I think that the way we find ourselves in this position of being kind of a jack of all trades can come from necessity, but it also can come from interest and just kind of the way that we're wired. The first aspect has to do with the fact that, as I always say on this channel, as a person with ADHD, we are living in a world that was not built for the way that we move through the world, the way we understand things, the way we relate, the way that we learn, and the way that we think. And so it takes a lot of creative problem solving on the part of the individual to find a way to navigate the world successfully or to navigate the world healthily. I think by default of that dynamic, we find ourselves, especially I'm thinking as kids and developing brains as you're growing up and learning about your world and your place in it, you kind of have a lot of times as a person with ADHD where you're just like hitting roadblocks, hitting dead ends, hitting brick walls, and you have to kind of back it up and pivot in another direction. And what that means is you end up going down a path. And maybe you go down that path because that's how you see other people going. And you think, oh, well, this must be what we do. And then you get so far down it and you realize that this doesn't work for my brain or the way that I operate or the way that I learn or think. And you got to back it up and pivot in another direction. And if you think about especially having that experience a lot as you are a kid and you're growing up and developing, you can imagine how many different things you've tried by the time you get to whatever age it is, and your peers have kind of more or less gone along the path that was carved out for them, right? And we might have to try 50 different paths, whereas our peers maybe had to try one or maybe up to a handful, right? And so you can imagine all of the different experiences that we are getting by trying various ways to achieve the same results as our peers. And I think that that can lead us to having a broader experience instead of a deeper one. Another component of this, I think, has to do with our hyper focuses and our interests and our hobbies and things like that, where we are trying something new and we've discovered that there's dopamine in that thing for us. And then eventually, whether it's after weeks, months, or years, we run out of dopamine for that thing and we have to back it up and pivot in another direction. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. It just is a fact of life for a lot of people with ADHD. I think that often as a result of both the first concept and the second one, you end up in a place where you look around and you're like, holy cow, I have all these different experiences and different things that I've tried, but I'm not like super, super, super good or the best at one particular thing. I also think that as people with ADHD, our ability to draw connections and to generalize things like skills, lessons, solutions, ideas, concepts, processes, I think leads us sometimes from one thing to another. And so it may lead us from one job to another, or one hobby to another, one sport to another, and things like that. And so I think that by the very nature of just how our brains work, out of necessity or interest, we are jumping from one thing to another at a higher frequency than neurotypical people might be doing, and maybe at a higher frequency than other neurodiverse people might be doing too. I think this seems a little bit more like special to ADHD, and honestly, it's something that I have come to really be proud of and value about myself. So that leads me perfectly into talking about kind of the benefits of this way of being, and I really don't think, to clarify, I really don't think that being a jack of all trades or being a generalist is, one, a choice. I think it is the way your brain is, and maybe for some people it's a choice, but I think that if it's as a result of ADHD, I do think that it is out of necessity by default, by the very nature of how our brains are wired. And I also want to make sure that it's very clear that this is also not a bad thing, because I do think that the messages that we get from the world and from others are oftentimes negative ones and can make us feel really down about something that can be quite positive. So kind of like I touched on before, I think that having a variety of experiences does a lot of good things for us and for our life and our relationships and our careers even. And I think that one of the things that it does that's really beneficial is it does allow us to have so many different experiences from which to pull when we need a creative solution, when we need an answer, when we need an idea. And I really think that so many of my ideas and my creative solutions have come from the fact that I have a really wide range of experiences. And I think that it allows us to look at things in a different way than other people might. And I think there's a lot of value to having that diversity of experience, whether it's in a group setting or even just in your personal life. I think there's something really, really important and special about that. And it's important to remember that about yourself if you feel like this is you and you get down on yourself for kind of being a jack of all trades and a master of none. I also think that it allows us, and maybe even our ADHD itself allows us to generalize concepts in a way that I don't notice other people doing in quite the same way, or maybe at quite the same frequency. I've noticed, for example, that in all of the different things that I've done in my life, even if I'm not doing those things anymore, or I'm not doing that thing currently, I often use knowledge and lessons and experience from that thing in my daily life now, even just as a stay-at-home mom, right? In my daily problem solving or just my daily idea farming of my own brain, right? And so I think that it's very valuable to look back on our experience that might be very, very varied, very varied, and very diverse, and maybe even might seem disjointed if you were to write everything down on a piece of paper. But I think it's important to see in all of those experiences something that you still bring with you and something that you use and something that comes in handy for you and that you can use to help others or to make your own life better. And finally, I think that having a wide range of experiences and being a generalist and being a jack of all trades is a strength because I believe that it allows us to have an enhanced capacity for empathy and understanding of the experience of others. I think about all the different things that I've done in my life, and inherent in those experiences is the fact that you have to and get to meet and work with and be surrounded by a wide range of people from a wide range of backgrounds and experiences. And you take that with you through your life, even after you're no longer in that setting. And I think that is hugely valuable for relationships and just for being a part of a community, being a part of a family, being a part of a friendship. Any of those things I think really, really benefit from a varied experience and a varied pool of understanding to draw from when relating to people. People often highlight this concept in the context of travel, right? If you've been to many different places throughout the world, bonus points if you've been to space even, right? You have different experiences that inform the way you move through the world. And in my experience and in my understanding and my observation, that tends to lead people to be more well-rounded, more compassionate, more understanding of others, and more caring and more open to things that might be different from what they think is normal or the standard or whatever it may be. And I think that the same concept can be applied to being a jack of all trades because it's like you've traveled in a way. It's like you've traveled within your own brain and the scope of your own abilities and interests, and you've gone to different reaches of society or of, different career fields, different industries, different activities, different sports, different hobbies. And I think that that is equally as valuable as what you gain from travel as far as perspective and understanding and openness goes. So lastly, I want to leave you with one suggestion that I have. If this is you, if you see yourself in this video and the things that I'm saying, and if you resonate with the idea of being a jack of all trades or being a generalist, and sometimes feel like that makes you less qualified, less valuable, less legitimate, or it makes you feel like you're behind in life or any of those things, I want to recommend just a quick activity that I think is really helpful in just maintaining a positive perspective and a truthful perspective about this concept about yourself. And what I'm going to suggest is that you do kind of a brain dump, just a very informal list of all of the things, or as many as you can think of, that you've done in your life. And it can be an ongoing list where you think of something and you add it to the list. And it doesn't have to be like you have to get them all out at once. But eventually you'll have built this list of things that's almost like a personal resume that you can look at when you feel down about the fact that you're a jack of all trades, or when someone makes you feel like somehow that is less valuable or less good than being specialized deeply and deeply knowledgeable and being an expert in something specific. And I think that it would be super, super helpful and uplifting to just have this personal resume and this list to just remind you of all of the things that you've done, whether you feel accomplished in that thing or not, whether you weren't in that thing for very long. It doesn't matter. It's really important to just recognize the breadth of the experience that you've had. I would be super curious to know what your lists are, or even just a few things, because I'm always surprised and just delighted to learn people's stories, their experiences, what they're passionate about, what they enjoy, what they're interested in, and what they're good at. So leave those down in the comments along with any questions or any comments. Let me know how this video makes you feel, and I hope that it makes you feel good. I hope that it makes you feel encouraged and uplifted. And before I go, don't forget to check out the podcast version, which is linked below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.